Ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, my name is Raven and welcome back to my channel. Now in today's video we're going to be talking about 3 factions that I personally would like to see added into For Honor in the future. With the addition of the Chinese faction that's dropping in October, we know that they're open to adding brand new factions, and of course they'd be stupid not to, because it just expands the roster, it expands the game, and of course it allows them to diversify the, fighters that are in the game sort of thing, so we get all these different cultures and so on and so forth, and it's not just knights versus Vikings versus samurai. We can actually add some other people into the mix without just trying to cram them into the actual factions that we have right now, like they tried to do with the Romans. We'll touch on that later. So today I'm going to be talking about the 3 factions that I want to see enter the game. Of course, you guys might want different ones to enter the game, and I would love to hear those down below in the comment section, because there are so many different cultures throughout history that had awesome warriors, and everyone will want different things. So let's get into the first faction that I would like to see enter the game, and of course for anyone who's been watching my channel for a while now, it's not going to surprise you to know that I want to see the Greeks enter the game. That is right, you cannot have a game about, historical factions punching on without having a Greek faction. Greece conquered the known world at the time, and they also had a whole bunch of warriors that were famous around the world even to today for being absolute badasses and just kicking freaking ass. And not to mention that the way that they look and the whole aesthetics of the Greek warriors and the culture and everything is just fucking cool. Now, yes, I'm a little bit biased because I'm Greek/Italian, but it still stands, okay? The Greeks just look awesome, and the way that they fought back then just fits the game perfectly. How many of you want to see a Spartan in this game? Come on. Now, I did do a previous video as part of my possible heroes they could introduce into the game series, where I talked about a possible Spartan hero, and that still stands, and you could not only make a Spartan hero like I said, but you could make so many more different kinds of Greek warriors, for the pure and simple fact that Ubisoft said they like to add cultures that had lots of different weapons. And considering the Greeks took out most of the world at the time, all the way into Africa, the Middle East, so on and so forth, they did end up adopting certain fighting styles and weapons from the cultures that they took over. Everyone did that. The Romans, pretty much everyone does that, okay? It's how it works. So when it comes down to the Greek faction and the different weapons you could use and armor types you could use, they have pretty much everything there, and it's pretty much a developer's wet dream when it comes to this game. When all is said and done, adding the Greeks into the game just makes sense, and it's an absolute no-brainer. Plus, now they've actually started adding executions where you can ledge people's bodies. How many people just want to yell out, "This is Sparta," as you're kicking some poor cunt's corpse off a cliff? Let's be honest. Every single one of you. Now, the next faction that I want to see enter the game might throw people off a little bit, but I want to see an Egyptian faction enter the game. And I think they'd be pretty goddamn unique. The whole Egyptian style to begin with is very unique. There's lots of gold, lots of scarabs, and they got their little Anubis dog things, and not to mention, once again, if Ubisoft wants a wide breadth of weapons, Egyptians are a fucking no-brainer, because they had some pretty crazy weapons. They had those, swords with the giant curves on them, and they used to have those, like a two-handed version of that, where it's like a fucking, two-handed glaive thing that was sort of had the big, curved blade on the end. They also had those massive shields that, were sort of tower shields, but they, were a bit more ornate depending on how rich the person was and stuff. Overall, their aesthetic and their weaponry is pretty goddamn vast, not to mention they had spears and so on and so forth. And overall, you could do anything with them. You could have a guy with 2 of those awesome looking fucking swords. You could have a guy with the glaive thing running around, the double-sided glaive thing. You could have guys with giant ornate shields with eagles on them, or fucking Anubis dog people, whatever. Either way, it'd be very, very easy to come up with brand new warriors in order to introduce them into the game. And considering realism is kind of dead to an extent, I'm not saying put a jackal dog person in. That would be a little weird. Even though we shoot rainbows out our asses, still would be a little bit weird. But you could put in someone who's wearing a jackal Anubis dog armor type thing, get up going on, and give him some awesome fucking weapons, and have him rock in and murder a bunch of people. That would be freaking cool. And you could do vice versa. You could have a guy in giant snake armor, sort of like from Stargate. That would be awesome. Either way, it would give the developers a lot of room to move in terms of coming up with all this crazy shit that they could do for the Egyptians. And of course, lots of gold. Just deck them out in gold. But that's it. My second choice goes to the Egyptians. Now, my third one, once again, is going to be a little bit left field, but it's a warrior culture that would fit perfectly into the game. But the next faction I want to see is the Aztecs. Now, pretty much for a similar reason to the Egyptians, the Aztecs are A, they're very, very unique. B, they had a shit ton of weaponry they used to use. They used to have these giant clubs with all these like sort of like tooth spikes things on them. They used to use spears. They used to use all different types of just weaponry that was really weird, and they like to club people to death, it seems. Which I'm all for, let's be honest. They kind of remind me a bit like an entire race of Shigokis just running around beating things up with sticks. But overall, once again, they have a whole bunch of unique weaponry. They also have shields and a whole bunch of other things like that, so they do have sort of a defensive capability there. They have all this really, really fucking unique armor, which we'll get into in a moment, but when it comes to the weapons themselves, you could pretty much do a wide breadth of shit with this that would even be different to the Egyptians and the Greek faction and everything else we have in the game at the moment. Like I said, the majority of their stuff was based around like clubs with little spikes or whatever, or little things that you could basically crush people with, or spears with little things. Either way, their weapons are kind of cool. And when you talk about armor, once again, like the Egyptians, you could do some really cool stuff. You could have Panther warrior guys running around in like, you know, head to toe Panther suits, just fucking clubbing people to death. They could have like little claw fucking weapon things going on like Black Panther. I don't fucking know. You could do a bunch of really cool shit with them. You could have Eagle warriors, which they did have, Eagle warriors, Panther warriors, you know, Jaguar warriors, so on and so forth. And every single one of them had a unique look. So say if you had those cheetah warrior guys, they would literally be running around in like, looking like a cheetah with their little skins on and all that sort of stuff, their furs and all that. And it just overall would be pretty intimidating seeing a bunch of guys who are next to butt naked underneath that thing running at ya, dressed like a cheetah, trying to club you to death. I'd be scared of that, especially if I hadn't fought them before and I'm like, who the fuck are these guys? What are they doing? That's weird. And then when you also learn about their culture and the fact that they're, you know, ripping people's hearts out and eating them and doing all that sacrificial shit, that makes it even more weird. And think of the executions. Will you please think of the executions? You could have him literally just like carve some guy's heart out, sort of like the shaman does, and rip it out and fucking like, yeah, gods, and then eat it or some shit. It'd be awesome. And one thing I would like to see, which would be really, really cool to add, you could even add in those Aztec death whistle things. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's fucking terrifying. But having one of those guys run at you while whistling that thing, and, you know, once again, he's this half-naked guy in a panther suit with a club, that would be the most terrifying thing on the planet. But when it comes down to it, the Aztecs, they're unique, they have a bunch of weapons once again, and their aesthetic is pretty damn cool. Not to mention the fact that like the Egyptians and like the Greeks, they were pretty much a warrior culture in terms of the fact that they were always punching on with someone, and they were always fighting, and they had really, really good warriors because they needed really good warriors to defend themselves and of course to conquer other people. But those are the three factions I want to see enter the game in the future. Those are my favorite three, but now I'm going to be adding a bonus faction to the game, and this one makes more sense in terms of like cleaning up some past mistakes the devs have made, and on top of that, it gives a lot of the players exactly what they've been asking for a very long time. Now, I have said this in the past, but once again, I'm going to go over it one more time. The final faction I want to see enter the game is a Roman faction. Now, we already have 2 Romans in the game, but like I said, they were sort of just stuffed into the Knight faction, and I'm not sure why. If they already knew they were going to be bringing additional factions into the game, Romans then should have been the first one if they already had a couple of Roman characters. Now, yes, the Romans fit perfectly fine within the Knights. It doesn't break anything. After all, the medieval Knights that are in the game right now, they got everything from the Romans, and of course, the Romans got everything from the Greeks, because that was a natural progression of history. So they're not completely out of place, but at the same time, they're not medieval Knights. That's not how that works. So what I want to see happens is I want to see the Centurion and the Gladiator taken out of the Knight faction, and I want to see them added into a separate Roman faction, and then of course add some more Romans into the game, like a Legionnaire, so on and so forth. Now, there are tons of things you can do with a Roman faction. Let's be completely honest here. Rome once again conquered the entire fucking known world, and they did the good old fashioned, we're going to get you guys, we're going to assimilate you into the Roman empire, and then we're going to take bits and pieces of your culture and mix it in with ours, and of course get you to just join us. So you could add, you know, goals in there, you could add pretty much anything you want into the Roman faction, and it would make some sense because the Romans did once again conquer everyone, just like the Greeks, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to weaponry and armor, there are a ton of things the devs can do with that, and then on top of that, it also frees up the knight faction to have some actual fucking knights in the faction. Now in the past, I've done some more videos on possible heroes they could introduce into the game into the future, and one of those that I talked about in the past was a Warhammer Knight. Now everyone's been talking about a Warhammer Knight with, like, you know, a massive two-handed maul for ages. That would be fucking one you can stick right into the knight faction, and everyone would love it. It's something everyone wants. You could also add a paladin into the game, some guy with a sword and a shield, and, you know, all this like awesome fucking knight armor. I've also talked about a duelist hero in the past that's sort of like a musketeer type guy. He uses a rapier, and he's more about like actually dueling people and being really good in 1v1 situations. You could add him into the faction. He would work perfectly fine. Overall, I think it'd be a really smart idea, and it'd be really, really cool to split the Romans away from the knight faction, make them their own faction, and then of course add some actual knight characters into the knight faction. That way you would make everyone happy. Yes, it's a tiny bit of work, but at the same time, it's more content for the players. It will attract brand new players, and of course it makes your existing players happy. But that is it, guys. Those are the factions I want to see enter the game. I really want to see the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Aztecs, and a separate Roman faction enter the game in the future. But once again, those are the ones I would like to see. Obviously, some of you might agree with me, you might not, but I want to hear down below which factions you want to see enter the game into the future. And keep in mind, they have to have unique sort of weapons and armor and so on and so forth, or have a historical backing for being like a faction that would want to jump into a war zone and kill a bunch of people. Don't go picking Switzerland, because those guys are neutral as fuck and they're not fighting no one. But that is the end of the video, guys, so thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and let me know your thoughts. I love reading and replying to all your comments down below. And feel free to check out my Discord and Twitter. There is a link down below in the description box for both of those as well. The Discord is a great way for me to talk to you guys outside the YouTube comments section. And of course, the Twitter is a great way for you guys to get a notification whenever a video is being uploaded, because YouTube is a bit weird sometimes. And if you like this video and you like what I'm doing here on the channel and you want to support the channel further, feel free to check out my Patreon. There'll be a link down below in the description box, and a link will pop up at the end of the video. And if you choose to donate, it is greatly appreciated. And a big shout out to my current patrons whose names you've been seeing in the background. Just wanted to say thank you for your support. It really does mean a lot. And please share this video around, it does help me out a fuck ton. And if you want to see more videos from me, please hit the subscribe button. I shall see you all in the next video. Have a good one, guys.